All right, I just want to make a series of videos, starting with this one with the Port or Public Order Response Team in Victoria, and how it is they've come to do what they do. Are they enforcing the law? How does that relate to us living beings, sentient beings who are actually bound by natural law? The rule of law, what that means, and common law. Hopefully I'll cover all those things in this one. And then we'll move on to other topics like the people, sovereignty, who makes law, what is government, and the oath holders and who they are and what their actual power is that the people give them, and how this all relates to this one particular video as to why we are where we are. Are these really lawmen or are they enforcers of slavery? So we're going to get into some definitions just after this video. All right, here we go.
If you've had enough as much as us, why are you still enforcing the boys? You have to. No, you don't have to. This is what, listen, we're not here to argue with you unless go home. Otherwise, they start issuing tickets. Bro, we don't want to do it, but we will do it. Right? Well, if you don't want to do it, don't do it. Stand up for what you believe in rather than say, just go home. All right? We get paid to do this, mate. I'm just as over this fucking protest as you are. By protest, I mean lockdown. Fair enough. Unfortunately, I've got to do what I've got to do. That's why you don't have to do that. You don't have to. You're choosing to do it. I'm not skilled to do anything else, mate. So unfortunately, at this time of my life, that's what I have to do. And the people of us that aren't skilled, we don't get paid. We're not getting food at the moment. I hear you, mate. My wife's in the same position. She's out of a job at the moment as well. I understand you've been pissed off about it. There's a way to go about it, that's all. And unfortunately, I feel like with coppers isn't it, mate. I respect that. I feel like it's like an animal factory. We don't want anything. We don't want any of this. You might not, mate. And that's the rule that we don't want to do this. We have nothing to do this because we cannot step down. People are killing themselves. None of this has to do with health. What health has to do with is exercise, fruit in the sun, not injections. Okay? Mental health affects this as well. You're locking us indoors. People are killing themselves. It's not to do with health. I don't have time to get that debate about it. I know, because you get paid. What I say is you'll get paid at the end of the day. You've got guns. At the end of the day, I agree with you. Then why are you standing on this side and not with us? Because that's what I get paid to do. So you agree with me, but you get paid to do that, so you stand on that side. I'm trying to talk to you the way I'm talking to you, as opposed to... Exactly, because you're doing what you're getting paid to do, not what you stand in, and that's why I disrespect you. That's fine, and I'm still asking you to go home, please. Yeah, get your paycheck so you and your wife can eat. We won't, but you can eat, so... We're not going home, I know, hey, we're not going home, we're not listening to your orders anymore. So, I'm just letting you know we come back again. Yeah, that's fine, mate. We don't. If you can't tell, we're not afraid anymore.
All right, let's stop it there. I'm going to go straight into what is an actual law, shall we? Let's see if I can find it. All right, here we go. So, a law, an existing condition that is both binding and immutable. It exists both in the present and in perpetuity. Perpetuity means permanent across all realms. So you think about the mental realm, that's, you can't actually see it. It's not something that's tangible, yet we all know it exists because we have thoughts. That's how everything gets created. Whatever we think, then usually turns into an action that gets manifested in the physical realm. So obviously there's a physical realm, that's where your senses in action, sight, touch, smell, etc. And then you've got the spiritual realm as well. So there's probably other realms I haven't mentioned, but they're the three key ones that I'm just going to draw your attention to. So a law is something that binds us across all of those realms. It's permanent, it's out of our control. We didn't actually have any say in it. So it existed well before us. That's what an actual law is. So we want to be clear on that. So you think about the actions of those men. Are they here to enforce something that is permanent across all realms? All right, there's the first question. All right, so now we're going to go into the natural law hierarchy of how natural law actually exists. So first at the top, you've got the universe. Some people call it divine law, others call it natural law. So let's pull up a definition of natural law, shall we? Where are we? There we are. All right. So natural law is a system of dynamics built into the universe that are binding and permanent. A body of universal spiritual laws that act as the governing dynamics of consciousness. So the word governing means control. So if you think about spiritual laws that control your understanding of of how consciousness is connected to natural law. So other definitions you could think about is like a working definition would be like a universal non-man-made binding conditions that govern behavior. It can be described as self-evident because it's objective, mechanical and scientific, because it's discoverable. It's a discoverable operational system that's already in effect and has been well before we came into existence. So that hopefully helps explain natural law. So let me just see what I'm going to pull up next here. Yep, so we're going to go, actually what I might do is I might bring up consciousness actually, because that's quite important to understand how to define consciousness, because that's obviously been spoken about in all these definitions. So conscience, two words is con and science. Con is a Latin prefix for together or with. Science is derived from the Latin verb sciere, which means to be aware of or to learn or to know. So conscience is knowledge of the actions that are in the service of the preservation and enrichment and advancement of life. If you really get that down, that's what our conscience is there to serve, is how to direct the actions that are going to be in the service of enriching and preserving life and also advancing it. Right? So some people call that a divine purpose. People who are connected to that, they are aware of their divine purpose as to why they're here. So, again, go back to the actions of the those guys in costume, saying that, that they need to be there for a particular reason. Are they actually acting in the preservation and advancement of life? I'll leave that to you to decide. So we're back into the slide of what goes below natural law, and that is the man's best interpretation of natural law, and that is through the conscience. So our conscience is like our conduit that connects us to natural law. So that's like how we access the spiritual realm, and the spiritual realm obviously is controlled by natural law and our understanding of that. So from that, we created common law or equity, which is equity based. So let me just bring up common law to define that. All right, just so we know what common law is. So like I said, it's man's best interpretation of natural law in the physical realm through the use of the conscience as the conduit. It captures the shared reality of our intuitive sense of justice and injustice, which is permanent and self-evident. So you see some terms are starting to repeat themselves, like you'll see the word permanent, self-evident. And yeah, we have a sense of justice, what's just and unjust. We're just born with that. You look at a toddler, for example, when they have what we call a tantrum, that extreme end, that screaming, that is like their soul screaming about the depth of injustice that they're experiencing, right? There's something about their needs for choice that hasn't been met, and it really deeply hurts them. And so they're showing with their tantrum just how hurt they are, right? That's something that every child has, right? It doesn't matter in what generations, we all have it. So that's what's permanent about it. So because we are connected to that permanency, then we can say things that are in protection of that are law, and it's common to all of us. So it's common law. That's kind of a really quick description of how to make sense of that. Now let's go back to that slide, and you'll see that it also says rule of law. Just going to take this one down. So when you move across, there's a rule of law. So what does the rule of law mean, right? So we've spoken about what the law is, something that's permanent and binding, that's beyond our control. So what is rule of law? So I'm just bring up that slide to give a definition to that. So it means that the law rules. So that which is permanent and binding rules, right? That is at the top of everything we do. So it refers to the constitutional framework. So what a constitution is an agreement that the people make with the body that they created to actually get their needs met for equity. Also infrastructure, what infrastructure is required for a society to function, the services, how to organize the labor around that infrastructure and those services, also the extraction of natural resources and how to distribute that on a system of equity. And so that's what the rule of law is about, creating an agreement between the people. So the people are the supreme over their government, because the government's a fictional, artificial creation, right? And so the government are just people who stand in this office that they hold. So I'll just read it. It says, agreement between the people and the holders of office to cooperate under a system of equity. So equity, just explain equity as not equal, but it's the level of support one needs to have the same quality of life as someone else who doesn't need the same level of support. But what we're aiming to do is have the same quality of life. And so different, because we're not all born equal, we need different levels of support. And so that's what equity aims to do, is to distribute what's required to reach that, that similar quality of life. And then it goes to say, and the rules necessary for equity to prevail. So that's what the purpose of government was. And that has been set up within each country. So that's what a constitution actually aims to do. So that's a really important fact to note as well. It's what a constitution is. And so let me see if I can bring up the slide. I'm just going to end it here once I finish this one, just so what that looks like, what that structure actually looks like. So there you go, the rule of law, no one is above the law. So you've got the people that are equal to the head of state, and then you've got the head of state is above the legislature, the judiciary, the executive, and as you see at the bottom says, the head of state is equal to the people. They just occupy an office. So I'm going to leave it down and get back in. I'm going to start on this one, and I'm going to get into a bit more detail on it, and then we'll do a few extras. All righty. So just let me just send this recording. All righty.